see if you received it.
We did receive it, and it's been forwarded to our complaints department. It falls under complaints.
Okay, because I had proven, I know.
I did hand carry that to them.
Okay.
They're addressing it, and we'll go through the fine details of the letter.
Okay, because I did prove that, in that letter that one of your doctors violated the False Claims Act. Did you see the evidence in that?
I did not. I did read through it, but you were saying that he didn't bill.
No, I said that, no, Dr. Dar, she was supposed to do a complete physical exam, and all she did was she checked the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. That would not constitute a complete physical exam. And she even claimed that she went and she did the private area check. Obviously not. I would know if she had done that. So she lied throughout. And so that's one part of the complaint. So I'm not sure why she's not being disciplined for that, because she did a lot more than that. And the question really I have is, the other issue that really came up with, I saw that doctor, your MedStar doctor, on October 15. Then I asked her for records a month later. I got my records from her, and it did not show a diagnosis for migraine headaches. And then I went 2 days later to another MedStar provider, and just for a sore throat. And it looks like Dr. Dar went back in and added a diagnosis for migraine headaches. What happened in those 2 days where she did that? Why is she tampering with my records? Why is she creating a fraudulent set of records? Now, you know why she did that. Now, I had migraine headaches prior to 2004 or 2005, and that's very consistent. And I even sent you a report from a neurologist done very recently, and that neurologist says even what I had back in 2004, 2005 is not really technically a migraine headache. So the migraine headache is really a non-issue for me, and a migraine headache is something where a patient goes in and complains a lot. It's not something where you run a test and it comes up saying migraines. Because the patient describes exactly what's going on, and then you get all these complaints, and then the doctor writes it, okay, you got migraine headaches, but there's really no objective kind of testing. So the reason she stuck that in is because another doctor had harmed me, and to cover up the initial harm, that other doctor changed the subject as a diversion and started to treat me for migraine headaches in 2013, which I hadn't had since 2005, so 8 years later. And it so happened that drug, which was verapamil, is a heart drug, and that is causing my severe heart condition today. So in order to, now she wasn't authorized to I told Dr. Dar that the other doctor prescribed the medication for high blood pressure. Had it been for high blood pressure, that other doctor would have been excused. But the other doctor had no right to prescribe for migraines when I didn't have migraines. And it turns out that's the medication that harmed me. So Dr. Dar was not authorized to contact the other doctor. But Dr. Dar did. And Dr. Dar found out that it was very important for the other doctor to make sure to establish that I have migraines. So Dr. Dar is plastering migraines up and down my record. Now, what I did complain about, she releases a statement stating I had a myriad of symptoms. Obviously not. You can see the neurologist's report too. My complaints were very simple, and my heart complaints were really simple. That's why it showed up so easily on a stress test, because that's the ultimate test to find out if you have a problem with your heart. And all kinds of problems showed up. And Dr. Dar knew right from the start when I complained about shortness of breath, and so it wasn't a myriad of symptoms. So she got it very easily that it's ischemia. and she knew it's ischemia, and she knew it's severe ischemia, and she knew all the problems which can come. I think any second, third year medical school student knows what's going. And now I didn't know it since I'm the patient. So I went in complaining, and then I also had an aortic aneurysm, and that was on a CT report. And Dr. Dar does not report it. Now, when you give a medical report, you do kind of summarize and you do give the substance, but you're supposed to summarize and give the substance. You're not supposed to say the patient had a variety of symptoms or a myriad of symptoms. You're supposed to say what they were. And it's very clear what I presented to Dr. Dar, exactly what my symptoms were. And they weren't that complicated. I mean, since the other doctors committed two severe injuries to my cardiovascular system, the things that showed up was an aortic aneurysm and stenosis in, the arteries going from the arms all the way back to the heart. And then any doctor can diagnose in office ischemia. If you're saying you have shortness of breath and sweating, and that's ischemia. Now, it's not caused by, and then also, so what doctor, because so since she wants to cover up this problem, ischemia. Now, normally you get this ischemia problem, if your arteries are clogged and so forth. But she also has a CT report saying that I have zero calcification in my arteries. So she knew that it's the problem with the heart. So she knew it's the problem with the heart, which is not by fat. And then she goes ahead and claims in the report, she's making this description. She puts obesity and slightly elevated blood sugar. Now, any of these problems, they should be like severe or chronic to show up on a problem list. So she intentionally put all this stuff out. And what I pointed out to Dr. Dar was when her assistant weighed me, the assistant was off about 40 pounds because she had no idea I weighed as much as I did. So the only reason I would even qualify for obesity is because of like a calculation. But she knew very well it's edema, that it's liquid weight. And I also proved it to her because when I took a diuretic, I lost a lot of weight and it came back when I stopped. So she knew very well these are the classic cardiovascular symptoms. You get edema, you get swelling under the eyes, you get collateral veins. So she called it a myriad of symptoms. Well, I had a myriad of signs, and the signs are a lot different than symptoms. So I had a myriad of, well, it wasn't a myriad, it was just a lot of detailed in one particular area. So I know what she did. She presented, what she did is the patient was evaluated in the past for a variety of neurological conditions, and I wasn't. I was, so she claims one of the, so obviously she claims one of the doctor's names. She says that's Dr. Body, and he evaluated me for Johns Hopkins for a variety of neurological symptoms. But in fact, the record, Dr. Body is an ENT. So he was evaluating me for sinusitis. So she writes that Dr. Body evaluated me for a variety of neurological symptoms. And that was in 2000. And then in 2003, she mentions another doctor, and there again she says, now that was a neurologist, but there wasn't much done. There wasn't any extensive evaluation. So the point really is, she got in touch with this other doctor. So I don't know what she's getting in return, but she's doing the dirty work of that doctor. That's pure and simple, because that doctor needs to point out that I have migraines even though I don't, because that doctor prescribed the medication that harmed me, stating it's for migraines. So if I don't have migraines, then obviously that doctor was not authorized to prescribe that medication for me. And then the second half is, since I have these cardiovascular conditions, which are not symptoms. If you have an aortic aneurysm showing up on a CT scan, that's not a myriad of symptoms. Why isn't that mentioned in my report? But really I got troubled by it is how she came back after I got my records and snuck those things in. Why is she tampering with the records? So that's a compliance issue. She could not have known the migraine issue without an unauthorized contact to that other physician. I never authorized her to contact the other physician. So she violated my rights in contacting that physician. And so then the second part of it is she tampered with the records because she gave me one records one day, and it just so happens, and you know the reason that I showed up, because Dr. Dar claimed she did a complete physical of me, but she never touched me. She didn't realize I had a fever and I had a sore throat. She didn't find any of that. She wrote on the report, the patient denies fever. Why? You know, if you have a fever, it's the doctor's job to find the fever. The patient, you don't have to inquire the patient if they have a fever. It's very obvious if they have a fever. So in fact, what happened is, since Dr. Dar her job was to do a complete physical exam. And one of the items she missed, obviously, because she didn't do that complete physical, I had to go into one of your other offices a month later, and had she done it the first time around, you know, I wouldn't have to make that second trip, and there wouldn't be the second expense and the second billing. But they were really good. So they got to the point, which is basically a sore throat, and they gave me antibiotics, and the fever went away after that. So I basically sat with that fever and in need of just really cheap, you know, antibiotics for an entire month, because Dr. Dar never touched me. So that's the point. It's not just she didn't do a physical. She didn't touch my body at all below my neck. So obviously she didn't touch me. If I had a fever, it shows right up. So that's the reason I ended up going into that other MedStar healthcare provider, and they just printed out the report which showed my entire problem list. And the only thing they did was the acute pharyngitis, which was okay, which is theirs. And the other 10 things on the items are Dr. Dar's, and that wasn't the only one that showed up. Dr. Dar even put in the family history of ischemic heart disease, which she did not have on the original report. So that basically, so when I asked her for the records, like in November, she did not have migraines, and she did not have family history of ischemic heart disease. And within 2 days, she gets without even seeing the patient, she gets a diagnosis of migraines and a diagnosis of family history of ischemic heart disease. Now, those are the two vital components, because the first component, the other doctor has to prove that I had a migraine to validate validate that prescription. And the second half is the ischemic heart disease, the family history. Why would my family history bother me if I had a CT scan and it shows 100% of the men my age have more calcifications than me? You know, so I basically have the best heart going as far as being at risk for coronary heart disease. So that's the second half. So what's going to happen is my heart condition basically gives out symptoms very similar to a heart attack, and I'm thinking I had multiple heart attacks, because when you look. If you look at what that exercise EKG shows, it shows a whole bunch of, I'm not sure if you understand this point, but the exercise EKG, they highlight the ST segment elevations and depressions. And if you are in risk of a severe heart attack, you get like elevations and depressions like -2 and +2. And mine is sitting way up at almost 10. So that shows the severity. Now, what they say is if you have -2 on a depression scale for the ST, then it's considered severe ischemia. So, and then the higher it goes, or actually the lower it goes, since it's a negative number, but the higher the number goes, the worse it is. So Dr. Dar figured out right from the start that, so she, because what happens is, so if it's something which is coming up on an exercise test and it comes up early on the test, really what it shows is, now obviously the doctor who ran the test stopped the test, but in my actual life, I do a lot more activity after that. So Dr. Dar should have advised me to limit my activities or something, right? Because if you go on a treadmill test and if the doctor stops you at the 4-minute mark, and in reality, in the kind of exercise you do on your own, you're actually sitting at the 10-minute mark, and you really should have stopped at the 4-minute mark. And, so when that didn't happen, what it means is the heart keeps getting damaged. I mean, there's no doubt about it, because that's the second half, the ST elevation. And I really did my research. The ST elevations, there is nothing outside of the ST elevation is either one or the other or both, okay? It's either a sign of a previous heart attack, or it's the sign of like an aneurysm or some other major abnormality within the heart. So there's nothing else that can be an ST elevation. And my ST elevation was so high. And so what they also say is the magnitude also matters. The higher the magnitude, the worse the condition. So I'm literally sitting, because you know what happened when I had my original problem. See, that's why it's so absurd when Dr. Dar presents it as a myriad of symptoms, or she doesn't know what's going on. The matter was looked into by the Virginia Medical Board. And because the other doctor wrote in that excuse about the migraine headaches, what they actually found is that the doctor was okay in doing what the doctor did, but at the same time, the board agreed that I suffered injuries. They told me to go to the emergency room. So if the Virginia Medical Board told me to go to the emergency room, and I'm showing up in Dr. Dar's office, and she's saying she's not finding any problems. So either she's really incompetent or she's really dishonest. And also, when I went through and with that other practitioner who caused the harm, when they and I guess since you are also MedStar, you know exactly how this works, they assemble a risk management team. So once you assemble a risk management team and you are discussing the issue, you can always make the argument the doctor is at fault and not at fault. But you can never say that the patient doesn't have any injuries. I mean, you only assemble a risk management team because something really bad happened. You're not going to assemble a risk management team, for nothing. So the risk management team, I don't know exactly what they did, but they were assembled and they were discussing my matter. So how can Dr. Dar say that, she basically says that I have a myriad of complaints kind of thing, making it look like, it's kind of like a somatoform kind of thing or someone is lying about their complaints. So, all kinds of people come into the doctor's office with all kinds of symptoms and complaints. Well, that's going to be a myriad of complaints. But in my case, I had the history. I had the medical test showing like an aortic aneurysm. So she doesn't even put that out. And then I had a very clear description of my symptoms. And obviously that's why she didn't do a physical exam. Because I have a recording of myself where I can get the abnormal lung sounds. Now you get the abnormal lung sounds when you have a heart condition. So that's the reason Dr. Dar, she never touched my body and she never used a stethoscope and listened to my lungs. Because if she did, now I put something up about Dr. Dar on YouTube, and what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that recording of that abnormal lung sounds. So she missed the abnormal lung sounds which are there. She missed the fever which is there, and obviously she didn't do a complete going into the private area physical exam, which I was going to decline anyway. You know, I wasn't going to go through with that. But obviously if she had requested...
Let me just stop you here.
Okay.
We handled through complaints.
Right.
I've written down the things that we need to look for
right.
In the record.
Because here's the problem too, I went through complaints, and when I spoke to them, they basically determined that everything has to get sent back to your office. So, you know, do you see how, the allegations I can make? Because what's happening is I sent my complaints into compliance, and they send it over to complaints, and now complaints is looking through it, and every single issue I bring up, the complaints say that it has to go back to compliance, it has to go back to legal. I'm not sure what legal has to do with it, but so you can kind of see I send the issue out to you. I guess that's your office, but I think you understood the issues. I mean, that's the problem I had with complaints. I spoke to Renee, and I don't think the issues are, which is kind of what I pointed out on my letter. I need to really discuss the issues with someone, to whom it is within their scope. So it's really, someone who really, is in complaints. I don't think, because I was trying to ask her simple questions like, what's supposed to come in patient history? Now this is like basic second-year medical school stuff, and it's all over the internet. It shows, from a variety of medical schools, the kind of stuff you're supposed to have on patient history. But okay, I think it's almost like 5 o'clock. You're trying to get out, but I think,
I will keep in touch.
Right, so I think Renee is going to talk to you tomorrow, I think. Is that how it is? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, for me, the most important issue right now is not going to be the compliance issue, because the 3 providers, Dr. Dar, Dr. McCarthy, and Dr. OK, I need to speak to each one of them on the phone. Now, can that be arranged? Because I need to know my complete health status.
What they'll do is they're going to go through it, and they'll have to do an investigation on their end. And then you will be notified. Then they will go through the complaint piece by piece. But
okay.
Get the other side of this.
Right. So I have no right to speak to those doctors to know my health status. I don't want to know about those issues. I want to know about my health status. So I want to know my health status since you saw. I'm not sure if you saw the EKG. Anyone see? I understand. But
not a nursing person.
Right. But anyone seeing that would know. I guess you have to read up what an EKG. I guess. But if you look at it, as soon as it goes into a little bit of stress on the exercise mode, that thing goes off. And so this other doctor, Dr. OK, he's basically hiding all the information. So that was the main point I had, which is basically he's hiding half the reports. So what looks really bad is what came up after the test ended, which would mean what happened before the test ended was a lot worse. So that's the kind of stuff I need to get from him. How would I because I know your rules are that the doctors have to answer my questions. right? So Dr. OK, I just saw him, and Dr. McCarthy referred me to him. So if I need him to answer my, and you can see, I asked him a simple question. I even wrote it down. How is my EKG different from a normal 44-year-old man? And he would not answer that. I mean, isn't that like the most basic question someone wants? So I'm not asking him something so complicated. It's just, how is my test different from normal? And he doesn't even want to say that. So, I mean, is there any way I need to speak to a doctor? How would I speak to a doctor? With the problems they have caused, I don't want to go into a doctor's office. I like to discuss the issue at least for half an hour on the phone with the doctor before going into a doctor's office. So can I do that with a doctor? Is that possible?
You have a relationship with that doctor, right? You've seen him.
Yes, but Dr. OK, right. But what if okay, now Dr. OK, he's already refused to even see me in his office. So that sheet I was mentioning, how is my whatever not normal? So as soon as I showed him that sheet, he actually said, he doesn't want to discuss the issues anymore with me. I have to go see another doctor. This is after 2.5 months of seeing him and him doing all the testing on me. So he had the so really quick, he had the same issue as Dr. Dar, and his was worse. He didn't even know who the other provider was, but he found out in another way. So he too made the unauthorized contact, and the funny thing about his migraine diagnosis is it showed up on the 3rd report. I have migraines up and down the report, and then when I asked for the records on the 4th report, miraculously my migraines disappear. So yeah, well, I do have the issue in court, and I'm trying to go after the actual original, so I'm trying not to expand what I'm doing. So, so really, hopefully I don't have any problems with anybody else. And so that's what the issue I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to limit it to suing just one party and not anybody else. So if I can get my information, my basic information, which is just my medical test, that was so simple, because that stress test, if you go for like an airline pilot exam, you have to carry that report with you. And this doctor did not even print that out. And he actually went in and wrote down, I showed it to you where he wrote down, I will not print out any more reports. So it's like, so what do you mean you will not? And he actually wrote it and he signed it. So he's really going to be responsible. And so, yeah, I mean, the compliance issue is really like a second issue. I really need to understand that, I mean, like you were saying the same thing, that you do not understand that EKG, which is, no patient is going to understand that test, but everything you see on it looks really bad, because if you look it up, what those numbers mean, they mean really bad. So, it's really bad, you go into a doctor, you ask him to, what it is, and immediately he says he doesn't want to see you anymore. So yeah, I like to see another cardiologist, but I like to, or any doctor who can discuss with me over the phone before actually going in. So that's the thing I want to arrange first. I need to know my health status, because that stress test, because that aortic aneurysm is the kind of thing which is anywhere between 1 and 17 years you have the problem. But the other thing it looks like is, when I'm doing activities, it really looks like I'm making it a lot worse. And if I'm making it a lot worse, I really want to try to limit some of the activities. Because what I was telling Dr. Dar right from the start is, as soon as I got the problem with that medication, the very same hill I would walk up with just a few days before and didn't have a problem, all of a sudden I had shortness of breath and sweating. So maybe I shouldn't walk up that hill. Maybe that was good advice, but none of the doctors gave it to me, and it looks like by walking up that hill repeatedly, exercise, I guess, is not the best thing for the heart if you have some kind of a heart condition. So, so that's the kind of information I need to get. If you can kind of arrange like any doctor who's willing to just discuss at least that report. I just want, so we're not going to get into any of the migraine or any of the other stuff, just the issue for that EKG, the stress test, if any doctor can help me understand that report. And I'm going to try with my primary care, but he seems to say that he doesn't understand it, which I don't really believe. I think it's medical school stuff, and he doesn't need to be a cardiologist to do it. But, okay, I'm going to try with my primary care tomorrow if he can explain it to me. And if he cannot, I can call you back, and if I can get some experts, someone who can interpret that for me. Okay, because the other doctor didn't give me an interpretation. He's supposed to issue an interpretation, and he didn't give an interpretation. And even the results he sent to Dr. OK, the primary care, he only included the first visit and the last visit, and he completely left out all the testing. So my testing is really, that test is really what I need the answers for. So if some doctor can answer like a few questions on the phone, that would be really good. So I'll just talk to my primary care and see if hopefully he can answer my questions. And if not, I don't know how you can work it out, because I wouldn't really have a relationship with that other doctor. I just need to understand that test.
Right. Okay. All right.
So it's more like I think. Okay. Oh, just one.
Number, so I have it here.
Okay, my phone number is 240-475. 7737.
Okay.
Now you do have, is there any kind of, because I read somewhere that there's something where you can get a second opinion, and you can also get like a second opinion remotely, say from a doctor from Wisconsin or something. Is that possible to have a doctor like in Wisconsin or somewhere just review my records? And
I don't think they have to be certified with DHMH that they can do remote, like teleconference kind of care, and they have to be registered with the state, so I think they have to be here in Maryland.
Okay, so for the second opinion, so would I actually have to go into the doctor's office, or can it just be done remotely as long as
you probably would have to go in for a real second opinion.
Okay, so I would have to go in. Okay. Yeah, so let me just try to work it out with my primary care, and I think Renee is going to get in touch with you tomorrow.